Good afternoon. We're at the Town of Rocky Mountain House for the December 20th, 2022 regular council meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. 2.1, adoption of the agenda. To adopt the agenda for December 20th, 2022. Is there any changes or additions to the agenda as we see? Seeing none, I'd like to call for a motion, please. Councillor Phillips.
I will make a motion to adopt our agenda as presented.
Thank you very much. All in favor of the motion? And that's carried. So we have no delegations today. Moving on to 4.1, adoption of the previous minutes. Are there any changes or additions to the previous minutes? I look to Councillor Hutchinson because she always has got a good eye for that. Seeing none, I'd like to ask for a motion. Sorry, Councillor Caprero.
That's okay. I will make a motion to adopt the regular council meeting minutes of December 6th, 2022.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So we have no delegation business today. We're going on to old business, 6.1, RFD of the Code of Conduct bylaw, and I will go to Mr. Kraus.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So at the last council meeting, the draft Code of Conduct bylaw was presented to council, and council requested 3 amendments to the bylaw for consideration before going into consideration of first reading, and those have been added. It's part of the process where council asked where they responded that they received the report and had an opportunity to review the report. And the words "and seek legal counsel" has been inserted into it, plus provide the respondent with 30 days to prepare a written submission to the report. So the 30 days, it was previously 14 and is now changed to 30 as requested by council. And the other change was a sanction that's in the sanction section. The words "a sanction that is appropriate to the severity of the breach" has been included for council's consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Mr. Kraus? Thank you, Councillor Shippold.
Good afternoon. I do have a question, and under the comments, under organizational, one of the things that indicates in there that this could increase the amount of complaints to be dealt with. And so understanding that, the question I have is, by adding who can complain, are we opening it up to anybody and everybody and to a free-for-all? So if some citizen has a dislike, could they come forward? And in this bylaw, it says that we must allow you to appoint someone to investigate, not can or anything, we must. So it could drive the amount of concerns coming forward, and the cost. There's a cost implication to that, and so I'm just not sure if we're aiming where we need to aim, or if because of a situation that occurred, we're opening it up more so than we need to. So I just want to make sure it's not a knee-jerk reaction to something that occurred that could cause us a detriment down the road in terms of additional costs. So. So that's where my fear is there. And I just question whether that's the route that we want to take. I know we discussed it and asked for you to make that amendment to the bylaw. I now, after reading it and looking at it, I'm just wondering if it's possibly not opening it up too much.
Thank you very much for your question. Did you want to reply?
No, thank you, Worship. And now I think that was what administration brought forward at the last council meeting, was for council to consider how open do you want this bylaw, because the draft bylaw did include public administration plus council members. So that's really a decision of council of how much you want the bylaw opened up and who can submit a complaint.
Councillor Auld.
To address that, could we have it so that if there's a complaint from member of public, that it goes through administration first to vet, and then if it's deemed appropriate, carries on? Would that
Well-
alleviate that issue?
Because it's in 17.2, right? Would it go that way first? Or do we have to add another step in there? Because you're talking about 18, right? 17 and 18?
Page 15, about a third of the way down.
Okay, well, I have it,
Um,
I have it printed, so.
I think, Councillor Auld, the gist of it is that basically anybody who makes any complaint whatsoever, it gets dealt with. It has to get looked at. That's the way it is now, and it can be anybody. So if anybody has an anger issue about even anybody around this table, it comes to us, and then it gives us no option but to have a review completed. So your point is, well, could management possibly look at it? That might be the alternative. I don't know. I just hate it to go to a review process right from the get-go, when in fact it could be worthless, you know, hopefully not, or, you know, hopefully people are
Frivolous.
bringing stuff forward, but should it be, to give us a window?
Like, when we look at 18.3, if a member of the public or another member makes a complaint, the member of the public or the other member must provide a copy of the complainant to any member, and a member of administration makes a complaint. The member of administration must provide a copy to the CAO. Do you feel that there would be, if it's a formal complaint, it has to go to 17 first? Like, how would we do that?
So, Your Worship, so Section 17 is an informal complaint,
Yeah.
which we just deal with informally through
Right.
the process. 18 is a formal complaint. So any complainant can choose whether they just want to do an informal complaint or a formal complaint. So what I'm hearing from council, there needs to be some vetting to make sure it's not a frivolous complaint prior to it going to like an investigator to go. I mean, the investigator in the bylaw can make that distinction, but that's an external investigator. And so, and I think what Councillor Schiphol's going, that's going to add cost to the process. So what I think I'm hearing is a formal complaint would go, it shouldn't go to administration. We shouldn't be the one determining if a councillor made a breach or not. It should be council, it's council's bylaw. So what I'm hearing is some provision in here that a complaint is reviewed by council to determine whether it's a valid complaint or not.
Like a-
Is that what?
Like the formal complaint is
Yes.
reviewed?
Yeah.
I think so, because we're gonna save, that was sort of one of the things, that there should be a step between that and the, right before 18 and 19, right?
Yeah, so Your Worship, if you look at section 19.1, that's where it stipulates the investigator will determine if it's a valid complaint or not. And from what I'm hearing from Councillor Schiphol's suggestion is that it's not the investigator that determines it, it would come to council to determine it.
Councillor Hutchinson, did you have a comment on that, or did you have a different thing?
No, I just, before Mr. Kraus spoke, I think the key to this is that there is the informal complaint process first, and it is laid out, I feel, sufficiently for what we need there. And then if it proceeds to a formal complaint, if that's determined after the informal complaint process, if that, I find it's laid out well, because anybody, typically, they're not gonna come in with a formal complaint initially.
Well, I think that's exactly
Right.
what he's saying, that you could, someone could skip the informal process and go right to a formal complaint.
Well, then,
And then, once you do a formal complaint, even if it's frivolous, it would go right to investigator. And the am I,
That's correct. Right now, it doesn't give us an option to go anywhere but to an investigator. And I guess what I'm aiming at is to put one little step in there where even if it was council who would say, yeah, okay, let's take it through the investigator versus we must, we might. And I think just to avoid cost. So if we look at it and we think it's something that we want to proceed with, then we can proceed. And if it's something we don't, then we don't have to. Right now, it's non-optional. And I realize it's laid out, but there's non-option in there for us to deem debate it. It automatically goes to Mr. Kraus. Mr. Kraus gets an investigator. That investigator looks at it and determines. And I'm just wondering if we can eliminate that step in there.
Counselor Phillips?
Thank you. I agree. I like what Mr. Schiphol's saying, that, you know, if not every complaint just right off the get-go goes to the investigator, it would be nice to have it come to council, then to the investigator after that fact, simply for, you know, it's a small town, for whatever reason, one of us may rub someone the wrong way, and that one individual could take it personally and completely abuse the system, for lack of a better word. And it would be nice to be able to take those and not have to go right to an investigator when it's just going to get kicked back. It would be nice to just be able to talk about it first, then go to the investigator if deemed necessary.
So if we look at 17.1, just an informal, prior to filing a formal complaint, a member of the public or another member, would that be council, another member, blank? I don't know what that would mean. May speak with the member and encourage the member to comply with. So do you want us to say in there, must go through informal complaint process first? Because sometimes you don't want to go through the informal process if it's, like, would that be, Councillor Phillips?
I think that they're two different things. The
Okay.
informal complaint and the formal complaint are two different
Okay.
roads. The informal complaint, you know, from looking at 17.1, could ideally just get solved with talking with the two parties. Whereas the formal complaint process, if deemed necessary, takes it to that investigator stage. So I'm fine with 17.1 the way it is.
Okay, so I'll go back to Councillor Schipholt. So then, on the recommendation of Mr. Kraus, the area that we would adjust it would be in 19, review of the complaint by the investigator. And you're saying that there'd be like a 19.1 would get shuffled down, right? And that prior to giving it to investigator, it would be discussed with council before going to an investigator? Is that where it would go?
Yes, Your Worship. So I would have to, or administration would have to rewrite 19.1, where it would go to council for review first, and then probably have to add in some more verbiage there of when it goes to the investigator, like upon councils. So, but it would be in 19.1.
Councillor Schipholt?
Mr. Kraus, do we need a motion to that effect, or Your Worship?
Yes, we'd have to make a change, so we'd have to make a motion to change 19. Correct?
Yeah, so it'd just be a motion that council instruct administration to revise the draft code of conduct bylaw for section 19.1 to reflect council.
I would make that motion.
Do we have any discussion on that motion? Are you going to type the motion up on the board for us? Okay.
Now, prior to voting on that motion, I also have another question about another section of that as well. Do we do them each individually then?
Your worship, we can, or,
Yeah,
the motion's on the table now, so maybe deal
Okay.
with this motion and then we can, and then council can.
Well, can we table this motion until we're done discussing things? And then we just have to do one motion for
And
everything?
revise this motion, yeah, if, however council wishes.
Which is,
Okay, well, let's
What
just
would
hang,
you- what would you
let's just
prefer?
hang on to the motion, and then let me bring up section 5.4 and 5.5. If you're on your computer, it's on page 22. And what that is I think they both say the same thing. 5.4 and 5.5. And here again, they're both basically saying that if you lie, you can get into trouble. Plain and simple. And they both indicate, they both have the same target. At least I think they both have the same target. They're aiming at the same thing. The wording is a little different, but I think that those two could be melded together to be one.
what does administration feel about that? Would it be worthy of a change, or?
Well, your worship, I think they can stand alone as presented, but I mean, if council wants them combined into one statement, I mean, administration can make that change.
Do you have, Counselor Shipple, do you have a suggestion? Like, do you want it to say, or with the intent to mislead council or members of the public?
No, I'm okay if you want to leave them both in there. I just think that they both say the same thing, and it's a redundancy and saying the same thing with two sections. And if you can eliminate stuff, you eliminate it. And so I'd be inclined to eliminate one and just go to one statement, just for clarity.
Counselor Hutchinson, do you have a comment on that?
The way I read that is the first one being a false statement, so something that is untrue. And the second one, I kind of feel that could be, well, I heard somebody say something, 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 and, I'm directing that to you. I heard through the grapevine, or maybe you saw it on Facebook or something like that. You're not saying something that's false, it's just hearsay. So that would kind of cover my hearsay is going to mislead you in making a decision possibly.
Yeah, but the word I think the word intent changes that, though.
But that's why there's two separate, that's why I feel they're two separate, and just to leave it as is.
I'm fine combining it or whatever, it doesn't matter to me. There's just like a fine line of the difference between intent to mislead and knowing the statement is false. I think it's the same thing as well, but
Yeah, I'm okay with leaving them both in there. I just think that they're saying much the same thing, and they could be combined, or they could stand alone. It just gives more room for misinterpretation when you have that. So that's the fear I'm trying to do, is if we're cleaning it up, then we clean it up, and if we leave it, we leave it. Go forward, either or.
I actually don't know how you would determine if someone intended to mislead council or members of the public. Like, how would we ever prove that? It's sort of like vague. Is that what you mean? I kind of think it should be removed too if it's just vague. Like, how are you gonna say, how do you know someone's intent? You don't know, like, right. I'd be in favor of removing that. Intent to mislead. or knowing it's a stall, you know, when someone says something that's false, that's provable, and how can you prove someone's intent? We're not a court of law. You don't know how someone's intending. Counselor Phillips?
Sorry, just, I understand both Counselor Shipple and Counselor Hutchinson's point of views on this. There is a slight difference between a false statement and an intent to mislead. There is a subtle, it's just a subtle difference. They're very close to each other. I would probably be more inclined just to leave it as is, just because there is a subtle difference between the two. But they could also go together as well. It's one of, half a dozen of the other. I do see there is a little subtle difference now that Councillor Hutchinson had made that comment. There definitely is a little difference between intent to mislead and a false statement, even though they could be very similar to each other.
So you would like to leave it as it is? That's your,
If I had a preference, I would just leave it as is,
Okay.
but also combining it, it's kind of the same, to be honest.
sorry, Counselor Hutchinson.
Perhaps we could ask admin to reword or see if there's a suggestion of better wording to make it more clear.
Yeah, I like that. Mr. Kraus, is this off the original framework sent by, whatchamacallit?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So, yeah, the entire bylaw up to where we just revised for the process is from the template put out by Municipal Affairs back in 2018 when they implemented this requirement in the MGA.
Now, from discussions at the Munis and all that, or at RMA, do we know if they've updated their template yet? Because I believe, who was there with me? You were there. Do you remember them talking about it in that code of conduct when that lawyer said, what are they called again? Internal Municipal Affairs are revising it? So should we leave it in and then wait to see what their revisions are? Because you haven't seen them yet, right?
No, I have not seen it.
Coming in the new year, she said. She said they're coming in the new year in February.
Okay. So then I think I would be fine leaving that until we see what the new, because I remember them saying that in that meeting that we were, that code of conduct seminar. So would you feel comfortable with that, Mr. Shipple, or Councillor Shipple, that we left that alone and just dealt with 19? Because 19 is new I think that's one of the reasons as discussed in that.
Yeah, most certainly.
So then we'll go back to that motion that's on the table and just look to see if we know what that says. Instruct administration to revise the draft bylaw, the code of conduct bylaw, and section 19.1 as per the council's discussion. Do you think that is reasonable? Councillor Hutchinson?
I have things I would like to add, so we
Oh,
can
okay.
vote on this, and then we can do a separate motion.
Okay.
I think would just be just as
For the
easy.
same.
No, for under section 22.
But this thing? Okay, yeah, let's get this dealt with so that it's not hanging over our heads. If that's okay, Mr. Kraus, that we have more than one motion on the same thing? Yep, okay, so, do we need any further discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll call this motion to a vote. All in favor of this motion? And that's carried. So then, Councillor Hutchinson, then before we make any motions, we should see if there's anything else on the table so that.
So under section 22, under sanctions, I have two things I want to suggest or discuss. Sanctions for a repeated breach of the same section. So if there is multiple complaints that are under the same, is it like, whatever, 5.B, or 5B and 5B.
So it's the same thing, then what's your recommendation then?
I don't know at this time, but I feel if you've done it once, that's bad enough. But if you've repeated the same breach of that same particular section, that definitely should be a more serious consequence. And if, heaven forbid, you go to a third, I think that there has to be some, the measures in place to realize how serious any breach of our code of conduct is.
So do you have a recommendation then of
No,
wording
I-
of what you would like to see?
No, I don't. And I would also like, and then again, maybe admin, if they are understanding what I'm saying, have some suggestions or would follow up with how to make those changes or to add that. And also what avenue is in place if a sanction isn't followed. Back again to consequences of, you know, this can't be taken lightly. It has to be, there has to be something at the end of the day. Those are just a couple thoughts I had under sanctions. Do we want discussion or?
Well, I don't, oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Phillips, because I need a minute to
So-
compose.
Just looking at section 22.1, where it says that may impose a sanction that is appropriate to the severity of the breach, perhaps that sentence could be impose a sanction appropriate to the severity of the breach, also taking into account multiple occurrences, something to that effect. Is that what you're kind of looking at, Councillor Hutchinson? Yeah.
So with that being pointed out, I think the severity of the breach kind of sums it up. Like if it's the third time, it's the severity of the breach, right? They've done something for the third time.
I guess my thoughts with that is if it's a second time, let alone a third time.
Well, no, I'm
it's-
just-
It's not, it's not clear enough in here. And again, that's why we decided to relook at this, because we wanted it very clear, specific steps. So it's like, 1, 2, 3, you're out, kind of thought process. You're not out, but you know what I mean.
Well, I think in a court of law, they just look at what's in front of them. They don't look at if this is your 5th time you've robbed the bank. They just look, you robbed a bank, this is the thing. So I'm not a judge or jury or anything like that. I think I'm happy with the way this lays out. We certainly can look at what municipal affairs comes back with, but I don't know how you would word that in here. And in the essence of we have a big agenda, I'm just wondering if we could move forward and unless you have a specific wording in mind. And Councillor Hutchinson?
Mr. Kraus, is this something that, have I explained enough that you could go back and find some wording that would be appropriate to come back with for us?
Your worship, to Councillor Hutchinson, I think I understand what you're trying to achieve in this. I would definitely need to take it back, and I would probably seek legal counsel on this wording, because council's acting in a quasi-judicial way in this bylaw, so I would want to make sure that we're in compliance to any other legislation or process. But I understand what he's trying to achieve, that I have enough information to take it back to legal counsel.
So, sparing the cost of that, we could just be finished and then wait until municipal fairs came out? I mean, then it wouldn't cost us anything. That's just a statement. Counselor Schiffel, did you have a comment?
I do. I think the sanctions are laid out now, that the severity of what happens, council, who is basically the judiciary, will determine what happens. So regardless if it says that or not, I think you'd be inclined to move that way. So I think it could be a mute subject to put that in there, because I think that it depends on the severity of what the code of conduct allegation is, as to what the repercussion would be. I don't think that adding that statement or any statements relative to, hey, if it was your 15th time, here's what happens, your 5th time, here's what happens. I think it's already laid out in the sanctions as to what you can do, and I'd be okay with just leaving it as is. Hopefully you don't get to a third or a second or whatever, and so rather than going through the process of changing that, I would be inclined to leave it as is at this point.
Counselor Alt?
Because at the end of the day, it would be council's decision as to the severity of the breach. So I don't know if it needs to be stated in there either, if there's multiple occasions. I think it does go back to council to say how severe that breach is. So I don't know how you'd even word it to get where the direction you're going. I can't think of a way to word it.
Okay, so, Counselor Hutchinson, yeah.
Well, the other one was what avenue, there's nothing in here to say what happens if these sanctions aren't followed as well. We need to have something in place if, I guess that would be another breach of the code of conduct if you don't follow sanctions. And then would we go through the investigation process again, or is that just coming to council to make that decision if a sanction is not upheld? I don't know how you understand, how you guys.
I understand what you're saying. Does it say something in the beginning about if a sanction is not complied with?
Your worship, the bylaw's silent on that issue.
Okay. Is that something you would like to add in the bylaw? So that would be a breach of the bylaw if a sanction was not fulfilled? Because I think that's what's happening with another council.
Yeah, I would like to see something in there to that effect, that if the sanction hasn't been followed through, that it come back to council. Would that be as an informal
Would it be in
investigation again?
Would it be in 6 or 7? Would it be respecting the decision-making process, adherence to policies and procedures and bylaws? Where would that go?
Your worship, it would have to go into section 22 in some form.
Not in the code itself?
The code is just, the beginning of the bylaw is just the conduct. Section 22 deals with the sanctions, so you're still dealing with the sanctions at that point. The sanctions not being upheld, so there would probably be, I would suggest, a clause in there of relating to what if a sanction is not followed.
Like 22.2? Oh, see, it goes 22.2 and then 22.1. Should that say 22.3?
It should, your worships. We'll correct that.
So then it would be 22.4?
Probably somewhere in there. But like I say, I would take that to legal counsel, and legal counsel would put it in the appropriate place.
And so, Councillor Hutchinson, do you have some sort of description of wording that, to clarify what you would like? Oh, up there. Well, there's a lot of words in there.
But it sounds good.
Okay, so we need to say that it would be like in 22.4, correct? Or just,
Your worship, I wouldn't worry about where the clause goes at this
Okay.
point in time. I mean, administration can sort that out, and then
Okay.
it'd be presented back to council for review.
Okay.
so, Council Hutchinson, is that, are you comfortable with the way that bylaw, or that motion reads on the board with respect to cascading or escalating sanctions for multiple breaches, as well as consequences for failing to adhere to any sanctions as imposed as a result of a breach? So we just discussed that we didn't want to deal with cascading or escalating sanctions. It's just to be for failing to adhere for imposed sanctions, correct?
Well, we discussed that, but I would still like to see something come back because February's, I mean, it's government. Who knows how long it takes for them to
So-
fall through. And it's just, it comes back again to us. We can take it out if we choose.
Well, I'd like to make a friendly amendment because we all just basically discussed that we don't want to change, that it's fine as written for the severity of breach. So it would just be on sanctions and any failure to adhere any sanctions. Do you feel
I-
comfortable with that, or you want to see everything in there?
I would, if that's the direction you're going, I would like to then split that into two separate motions with the cascading and escalating sanction of multiple breaches as one, and then the, however I worded it so well.
Yeah, she's
Thank you,
got it there.
Tracy. And then have a second one then.
Okay. So if we could see the first motion, and then we can't make the second motion until we dealt with the first one. With respect to cascading and escalating sanctions for multiple breaches, that's, you'd like a vote on that? Okay, so all in favor of that motion as it stands? And all opposed? Oh, sorry, I thought we were going with what we thought before. So that's carried. Now the second motion. With respect to consequences for failing to adhere to any sanctions imposed as a result of breach. Is that? You're happy with that wording? Okay, all in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So does anybody else have any other items on the code of conduct? Counselor Schippel, did you have something else? No. Anybody else have anything else? So I think then we can say that that item is concluded with those motions, and we can move forward in the agenda. So,
Sorry, just, do we need to make a motion to have this brought back to future council meeting, or that'll just happen? Okay.
okay. Good question, but that's where I went with it, so. Okay, so, Counselor Procedural Bylaw 6.2. Mr. Kraus.
Yeah, thank you, your worship. So with council requesting to establish the committee of the whole meetings in 2023, we needed to go back and amend the procedural bylaw. Administration did take the opportunity to clean up the bylaw to a certain extent. So we will, if I could just quickly go through it to show council the changes. There are changes in the definitions, but that's just housekeeping, so I don't think council would want to go through all of that. So if I can just move to section 4.
What page would that be? Like when it says page 9 of 41?
6, your worship.
Thank you.
So that section now establishes the committee of the whole meetings will be held every second Tuesday of the month at 6 p.m. There's also provision in that clause, unless counseled by a resolution of council. So we will, on the first council meeting of each month, have an agenda item for establishing the committee of the whole. And then administration can advise if we have enough items or any items for that committee of the whole. If there's nothing, council can just cancel it. But I will tell you now, we have the first 3 months already filled in. But, yeah.
So you're, oh, I see, okay.
So it's just
Yep,
establishing
I
it,
got it.
and then council has the opportunity to cancel if it's not warranted. If you go to page 7, just some cleaning up, in camera to closed session, that's just following the current verbiage in the MGA. Page 8 is the same thing. So, and then, if I could go to page 11. So this is in dealing with the agenda. So it was for delegation requests. So the way it currently works now, the delegation puts in a request. Under the bylaw, I'm obligated to sign it off, approve it. But in it, the bylaw, it also says council may refuse to hear a delegation. And the trouble with that in the current bylaw is, well, how does council determine if they don't want to hear a delegation? And that's more for, under the current bylaw, a person could come back every council meeting with the same issue, and they would still be heard. So what this provision does, if we're noticing that, I can contact council via email or somehow and say, we have this request for the delegation, does council want to hear it? And then council can just respond, yes or no to me with the majority. So it just puts a process in place for that.
So just on that item, just a clerical thing, where it says B and then it goes indent A, should that A be an I, like a Roman I? Like up above?
Your worship, we can make that change so it's consistent.
Is that
with the
right?
bylaw. Yeah,
Oh, it doesn't replace A though, right? Like
No.
it's an I?
it's an I.
Okay. I don't have any problems with that.
This is cleaning up.
I have questions on page 12. As soon as it's like just the next page. A motion must be made on the agenda on the agenda item before it's debated, and the chair may ask for a motion, or the chair or council may put forward a motion. I think that's not really how we've been doing it, and I think it's been rather productive to have a little bit of discussion before motions come out, sort of so that people understand why someone's making a motion, and we kind of can hash out the details before someone just would make a motion without any discussion in there. Like it says we can ask questions, but we've been having really constructive discussion before motions are made. And then it also has helped us make, motions that we're sort of like straw polled on a little bit already. We're all sort of like committed to already. And I think, for example, if someone came in and just made a motion, I just like to have constructive conversation about the motion. And the way we've been doing it then isn't following this procedure. Could we add something in where we're allowed to have discussion before motions are made?
It's council's procedural bylaw. It's how council wants to determine how they run their meetings. So I will leave it up to council to discuss.
You'd have to make that motion to make that change, if that's how you would like to do it. Because it's in the bylaw right now, so it would just be, if that's how you feel. I feel we go around and around. I don't feel we're,
Okay, so
I like the motion first and then the discussion. That's my preference.
Okay, I just thought we would make all the changes and make one motion at the end, but I can make a motion. I would like to make a motion that we add in here a phrase, I'm not gonna say where, it's on page 12, that we're allowed to have some constructive discussion before making motions on the item there. So 11 agenda. And that would be FI. Or sorry, would be under I. Or in 11 somewhere. Have discussion about the agenda item before
A motion is made.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I feel would be substantial. Do we have any discussion on that motion? Counselor Ald.
I don't see a whole difference between having the discussion before or discussion after. Once it's on the agenda, once a motion's made, then we can have that discussion. If somebody feels strongly about a motion they want to make and have that put to council for discussion. Sometimes I feel the round and round beforehand, everything kind of gets watered down and changed. I think if we have a motion on the table, then we can have a discussion about it amongst ourselves, and then from there, we can make a decision on that motion.
And Counselor Shippold.
I guess we'd be prepared to police ourselves and through that process. Because right now, the discussion that I've seen automatically occurs prior to a motion on the table. So if we were to maintain that or go that route as the procedural bylaw indicates, then I think we ourselves have to make sure that we're prepared to do that individually. So.
Yeah, I still think that having some discussion on the agenda item before a motion's being made helps us discuss the item more thoroughly. Rather than just having a motion to discuss, we could discuss the whole issue, as a group. It stems for better decision-making if we can have discussion, brainstorming, stuff like that, rather than just going forward with a motion. I think sometimes if you make a motion right away, it's going to take away from having, open and honest discussion about that agenda item. That's all. Okay, so if there's no further discussion on that, I'll call that to vote. All in favor of that motion? And all opposed? And that is denied, or defeated. Thank you. It's not carried. Okay, Mr. Kraus, back to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So on page 13, you're just referring to question period, and that's been scratched because we don't have a question period. That's just a remnant from an old bylaw that was missed in a previous revision. And the same on page 15. It should say point of privilege versus question of privilege to match the definitions. So that's just housekeeping. And then if you go to page 16, under D, item 3 has been deleted, and that just goes back to the delegation where I previously talked about that I can consult with council before approving a delegation. And
Counselor Ald.
Mr. Crowe, so that, coming back, having the opportunity to bring that to council to hear for discussion, because in the delegation report, they always state what their intent is to discuss, correct?
That's correct.
So, yeah, so we will know if we've heard the same.
Yeah, and really the provision's only going in, and we haven't really seen this, but I mean, well, we've had a couple delegations come back on the same topic. So if delegation is coming back on the same topic, it just provides the opportunity for me to consult with council whether you still wish. Thank you. Just skipping the housekeeping items unless council has any questions on just word, because I think so the next major change is on page 36. Just give everyone a moment to get there. And the deletions on page 36 is just to reflect the amendment in the MGA. So in August this summer, previously there was a provision in the MGA that the mayor is ex officio on every committee of council. That has been deleted from the MGA. So we're just matching the bylaw to the MGA. And that is it, your worship, except for Schedule A, where we did add to the orders of the day, confirmation of committee of the whole meeting, first council of each month. So it'll just be on the agenda to confirm the committee of the whole meeting.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions or further comments on that bylaw changes? Councillor Hutchinson.
I would just recommend that council give first reading to bylaw 2022/15 as presented.
So you'd like to make a motion? Okay, would like to have any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call that to vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So moving forward in the agenda, we're at 6.3. Sorry. The RFD for Varme Energy proposal. Mr. Kraus, did you want to discuss that?
Sorry, yeah,
Sorry, you didn't have your light on.
Just for point of clarification, we're just doing first reading on this bylaw. We're not going forward with a second reading?
Did we want to do a second reading? Nobody else made a motion.
Oh,
Does it need to come back with the changes before we finish all three readings? As a clean bylaw?
There is no
Okay.
changes.
There is no changes to it. Just one typo from an A to an I.
To an aye. Would you like to make a second motion?
yes, I would like to make a motion that we get second reading to bylaw 2022/15.
Okay, all in favor, is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And Councillor, and all opposed? Councillor Schipel, did you vote? Yes. Sorry, thank you. So that was carried. Councillor Hutchinson.
I'll make the motion then that council give unanimous consent to move to third reading of bylaw 2022/15.
So, I would like to discuss that motion. I think that we should do it on a second meeting. I like to show, transparency to, and it's a good habit to just only do 2 readings in a meeting, and it's not gonna hurt anything either way, to postpone the final reading, and it just shows that we are being conscientious of the public having opportunity to see what we're doing. So I think that we should wait and have it at the next meeting. Is there any other discussion on that item? Counselor Ald?
Not a concern, just if there's no changes to the bylaw and we've given the readings, I'm not sure why we'd wait until the next meeting.
So we didn't do any changes to what was changed today, but there is a lot of changes. Everything in blue was a change to the bylaw. So that would be changes that we've made and then just voting on it at the next meeting. Would be my understanding of it. Counselor Hutchinson?
I just feel that the changes that have been made were housekeeping issues, and adding the third meeting, there wasn't really anything changed, that's affecting anything that we do at our meetings. So I feel we could go ahead with it.
Yes, but just keeping as a procedure, it's not needed. We can hold it to the next meeting, just give the opportunity for the public to see that we're changing a bylaw and it gives 3 meetings. If it was normal procedure, we wouldn't have to have the unanimous consent motion. We could just do it. So, you know, the MGA is already suggesting with that. But if there's no further discussion, I can call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion?
What motion?
The one on the board there, that council give unanimous consent to the move to a third reading. So I'll call that to a vote if there's no further discussion. All in favor of that? And that is not carried because it has to be unanimous. Oh, sorry, all opposed. And so that's defeated. Thank you, Mr. Kraus. I forgot again. I'm short to jump to that. Okay, so are there any more motions for that item? Seeing none, we'll move on to 6.3, the RFD for Varme Energy proposal. Mr. Kraus.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So council received a delegation from Varme Energy on a waste-to-energy project that they are trying to work on in Innisfil. Council has asked administration to consult with Varme for more information. Right now, they're very in the preliminary stages of their development, and they're asking us to sign a letter of intent to at least have discussions on utilizing the waste from Rocky Mountain House in their future plant. The only information that has really come up to the surface is that they would charge a tippage fee at a market rate or value, so similar to what we're paying now or what the region pays, plus a 10 to 15% environmental fee. So it would cost us more, from my understanding, to haul our waste to this plant. Plus, we'd also pay additional haulage fees to get it there, because we currently take it to the landfill here. So we leave it for council's discussion whether they want the town to enter in, at least into the letter of intent for discussions, for future discussions, or to accept it for information at this time until more information is available.
So I'd like to make a motion that council postpone the decision on the Varme Energy Incorporated proposal to after the presentation from the Recycling Council of Alberta on January 3rd, 2023. Councillor Ald.
I just had a question for administration first. Do you know if I'm remembering right, Sylvan Lake went through that waste energy study for several years and then ended up scrapping the whole idea? Do you have any background information on that?
Yeah, Your Worship, to the Deputy Mayor, they did make a presentation when we were still in the Waste Authority, and that was it was converting waste to energy with the end product as fluff.
Fog Dog was the name of the company.
Yeah, and that didn't materialize. I think Mayor Rimmer of Caroline is also in discussion with another firm for one out near Caroline. So there's a lot of these developments trying to get off the ground right now, I guess.
Counselor Phillips?
Yeah, I would like to see our, the Recycling Council of Alberta presentation in early January before deciding on this. I do have a concern, though, with a premium that would be paid in order to do this, the extra 10 to 15% cost, because that becomes real dollars when we're talking about, I believe we had, I'm not sure how many tons we have, but we have a fair amount that's still going to the landfill, so that's an extra cost that would have to come to, you know, to the ratepayers. So that's my concern, is that, yes, it may be a good thing to do, but financially, is it a good thing to do? That's all.
So when they first gave the presentation, they actually didn't have tipping costs. They said that generally, the tipping costs would be equal to what you're already paying. It wouldn't, this 10 to 15% that's described here, they don't say that. It would be whatever you're currently paying. And like, I like the idea that our garbage isn't put in a hole and buried, that it's turned into energy, and it's a very, you know, clean source of energy. So I'd still like to consider it, you know, and just have a little bit more information, especially with the Recycling Council of Alberta's having their information in that. So I'd like to still keep it in mind that we are stewards of the earth, you know, and looking into things at the same cost, or a small change is still better than burying it in a hole in the earth, in the ground. Councillor Boniface, did you want to make a comment about Varmy? Because I know.
I agree with everything you said, Mayor. I mean, I'd rather we build this in our own community than be trucking our garbage out of here, and then, you know, even if the county has a large amount of garbage too, like, work out something where we're taking their garbage and charge other people to bring it to us if that's what we're going to do, rather than us hauling it somewhere. Mr. Kraus is right, where it's not only the tipping fees, but an hour's drive for a truck to dump instead of 20 minutes adds a lot of fuel. So I'd like to see us hold off.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table. Is there any further discussion on that motion? And so I'll call that motion to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So moving forward in the agenda, 6.4, and we have Ms. Quinlan with the budget, our favorite thing.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. We're just bringing back the high-level summary of the budget deliberations for you. So I'm not going to go through all of the budget, but so basically after our deliberations on December 8th and 9th, we have a total operating budget of $23,873,507 and a capital budget of $16,328,359, as well as amortization of $33,21,410 that we're looking for approval today. Just in really brief terms, just if people are watching, or just to summarize our deliberations, we presented the 2023 budget on the 8th and the 9th. It was a collaborative process that starts in the summer of '22. We do the process includes a service level review, budget assumptions. We do a public budget survey, and there's consultation throughout the administrative team. We had our presentations on 8th and 9th. We basically had one change to the budget, and that was where we pushed the dressing room capital project from 23 to 24, because it was really, it's part of the feasibility study, and that study is not concluded yet, so we moved it out a year. Overall, we're looking at a 2% tax increase in the budget. There were several options presented and allowed council to deliberate so that they could, determine how they want, if they wanted to try to move the residential and commercial rates closer to the provincial averages. The overall increase is going to be slightly different for the three major classes, so it'll be 1.29% for residential, 2.92 for non-residential commercial improved, and 1.78 for non-residential large. Overall, this all works out to an overall 2% tax increase. And just to reference, it'll end up for an average property, it'll be $29 per year for a residential and $195 and $347 for the other non-residential respectively. And just to mention, CPI is currently sitting at 6.8%. And since we've had the presentations, we're hearing ranges from anywhere from 1.7 all the way up to 12.5% throughout the province as far as potential tax increases. I have it stapled the wrong way. So we do have a table. We included the table that shows your tax dollar allocations. I really like this table, and you might want to keep it handy for yourselves during the year if you have a taxpayer call you, because it breaks it down for me into something that's translatable. When you talk about hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, it's very difficult to relate to, but, $1.56 for protective services a day, I can understand that, So it's a very handy table. I do highlight some of the key concepts that were in the budget. I won't go through them at this time. I think we've had an opportunity to discuss them. We also outlined what we've got in the capital. So the capital is 16.3 million. There's a broad range throughout the different divisions that we have in terms of where the projects are lying. The bulk is going into utilities this year, mainly because of the construction that's continuing on the wastewater treatment plant. We're also using a variety of funding sources. And at the end of it, and I listed some of the key projects that we're doing. I didn't list all of them. There is a schedule in the back that lists all of the projects. And overall, I just summarized. So really, operating and capital combined is 40.2 million. And if we add the amortization in, which is a non-cash item, but when we do the financial statements, we have to include amortization in the budget. So that's why I always add it in so that you see it as an add-on. So our overall total budget is $43.5 million. So I guess with that, is there any questions about this and we will be updating your binders. So once we get the pages done, if you want to bring them in, maybe on the 3rd, the next council meeting, we'll collect them, replace the pages, and then return them to you.
Sounds great. Does any council member have any questions for Ms. Quinlan at this time? No. Would someone like to make a motion then? Councillor Phillips.
Sure. If there's no discussion, I'd like to make a motion that council adopt the balanced 2023 operating and capital budget with the total operating revenues and expenditures of $23,873,507, as well as non-cash amortization of $3.321410 million, and a capital budget in the amount of $16,328,359.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So moving forward in the agenda, we have an RFD notice of motion under new business from Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this notice of motion that I brought up at our last council meeting was just to have the discussion about the concept of coffee with a counselor, to be able to have, set times where there's a counselor, whether it be here in the town office or at the regional rec center or wherever we happen to do it, just to give the public the ability to come and have a conversation with a counselor about whatever they feel is the topic of the day or something they need or want brought up or what they think is a good idea. I just think it's a good way to have council exposed to the public and be able to hear what's going on out there.
Okay, would somebody like to does someone have any questions?
No questions, it's just, I brought this up quite a while ago too, and I'm glad to see that we're taking the next step. I know there's a number of different municipalities are doing it, some are doing it a little bit differently. We're going to a different business in the community to have coffee, or and advertise. We're gonna be at Restaurant A.
So I'm just gonna put a pin in that. Did you already make your motion?
I have not, but
So
I would.
do you have any questions? Because you're discussing the motion.
No.
Okay, well, we just voted and discussed it.
It says in here we need a subsequent motion needs to be made. I was giving suggestions.
Well, we can't discuss things until someone makes a motion. We just passed that in the procedures
would-
thing.
I would be happy to make a motion.
Okay,
that
thank you,
we-
Councillor Phillips.
That we direct administration to explore the feasibility of putting on coffee with a counselor and what it may look at from location, time-wise, just to have administration bring that back to us.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hutchinson.
Do you have any ideas as to what you would like to see? As I was saying previously, there's many municipalities that do it in a different way, where you may explore going into businesses, restaurants, wherever it may be, say we're going to be here from this time to this time, or it may be a park or playground, or are you thinking along the lines of just in this office where there's support staff if need be, and are we possibly thinking about, is it just one, or would it be two at a time?
Councillor Phillips.
So I'm kind of open to all ideas, simply because I'd like to see this as a council, a council initiative, exactly. So whether we have 1, 2, 3 council, I don't know we have to have all council here at that time, because I don't know if that's necessary, but I would say 2 or 3 at a time would be a good thing to have. I do like the idea of maybe moving it around, sometimes having it here in the council chambers, maybe sometimes it's at the recreational center, maybe the next time is at the swimming pool, or at a local business. We could do that as well. So I'm open to whatever ideas my council member colleagues have, because we all have good ideas.
So, Councillor Boniface.
Because of our rule of 2 counselors, would this not require 2 counselors at all times? What would be the difference of me sitting here having a coffee with somebody and me having a chat with somebody? I don't see the difference. Somebody explain it.
Mr. Kraus, did you want to talk about that policy?
Thank you, Your Worship. So that policy, what it stipulates is if a counselor is meeting with an individual or business or whatever, for the purpose that that individual or business is going to be requesting some action from council as a whole, that to be 2 there. The policy does not prohibit council from meeting individually with ratepayers for general questions.
So if someone came to coffee with the councillor and suggested this, then they would be politely told they can't, and they'd have to book a meeting? That be the proper procedure?
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you for clarifying, I appreciate that. I would like to know if, Councillor Phillips, if this would be a public relations thing, or we would have to do a budget item on this because we get paid to go to meetings. So are you suggesting this would be a PR item?
Yes, I would suggest this would be a PR item.
Thank you very much for clarifying. Is there any further questions or discussion on this motion on the table? Okay, so I think I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of the motion on the table? And that is carried. Counselor Shipple, would you just hold your hand just a little bit longer in the air? Because you put it down and I double check and then I don't know if I saw you or not. Thank you very much. That was carried. Did I say that? Okay. Okay, moving forward in the agenda, and we come to 7.2, notice of motion for Deputy Mayor Auld, travel and expense policy. Counselor Auld.
So I think it's time that this travel and expense policy is a little bit outdated. I would like to make a motion that council review the travel expense policy and ask administration to provide municipal comparisons at the next council meeting.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions about this? I would also like to ask if administration could look at implementing whatever raise we give to staff and administration, that it's mirrored in this. Is that like, could that be part of it, or do I have to put that in the motion? Like just for discussion, because when I was speaking to other councils, they say that it, and Councillor Shipple brought that up, that it's usually tied like to what we give staff.
Yeah, so thank you, Your Worship. So that's a different policy.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's your remuneration policy where that would go in.
Oh, okay.
So that could be a separate motion.
Sorry.
And if I could respectfully ask the deputy mayor to revise his motion to the January 17th meeting versus the next council meeting, just knowing we're going over the Christmas season and we're going to be short-staffed for part of that.
I will amend it to that effect. I just think it's good for everybody to go through the policy and just a good reminder on what everybody's eligible for and not, and I think it's just time to have a review.
Councillor Shipple.
I would support Councillor All's motion.
Okay, so if we don't have any further questions, oh, sorry, Councillor Phillips.
I definitely in support of Councillor All's motion. I would also like to see it happen with the remuneration as well, because they are two separate bylaws.
Okay, so, did you want to do a friendly amendment to his motion, or do you want to wait and make a second motion after?
I can wait and do a second motion after, that's fine.
Okay. So, I don't see any further questions or discussions on the table about that motion on the table, so I'll call that to a vote. Just double checking I don't miss anybody. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So, just before I go back to Councillor Phillips, Mr. Kraus, would that be a notice of motion then? Because it would be a different topic, right?
Your council can just make that motion. Worship.
When, he can make that motion even like in this?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to
Yeah.
check that I'm doing the right things there. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, I just think it's prudent while we're looking at one travel and expense policy, that we should also look at the remuneration policy if we're looking at different municipalities at the same time. So I would like to make a motion that administration bring back comparisons of other municipalities for the remuneration policy as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Did we have any questions or further comments on that motion? And thank you for making that motion. Like I said, when I was at the mayor and Reeve meeting last week, we discussed, some of these topics, and it being tied to remuneration when we give the budget, and it being tied to the same amount makes things a lot more straightforward. So I'm in favor as well. Okay, so I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And I'm sorry, do you want it on the same day? Like, do you have enough time to do it on the 17th, or do you want to move it? Just, sorry, that might be a friendly amendment. Should we put both of them to February? So you have... Okay, sorry. That would have been a friendly amendment, but I just wanted to make sure administration has enough time before we make a motion. Okay, so all in favor of that? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So moving forward in the agenda, correspondence for action 8.1. Mr. Kraus, did you want to start off with that, or how do you want to proceed?
Yep, no, Your Worship, I can, just to provide history. So the town did receive a letter from the Rocky Taxpayers Association on November 6th requesting information. Administration did respond on November 15th, providing where they could find the information that they requested. And then they did respond again, looking for additional information. So just to let council aware of process. So under FWIPE legislation, if it's routine disclosure, something that we do all the time, or it's publicly available or legislated, then we just provide that information or where to find that information as per request. But if it's not a routine disclosure, then we ask them to go through a FWIPE application. And the reason why the province has set that up is mindful of administration's time, the requests that can come in, and for requests of a lot of information shouldn't be a burden on the taxpayer. It should be, that cost should be recovered to a certain extent. So that's what we advised the Rocky Taxpayers Association of. They did come back with another letter trying to, I guess, circumvent is probably not the word, but well, it is the word, circumvent that process and ask council to direct administration to provide that information to them. The information that they are requesting is available on our website. They look through all of our financial statements going back several years are on our website. And if they're looking for the cost of the waste program, there's actually a line item in each financial statement of the cost of the waste program. So if you look at the 2019 financial statements, you'll see waste costs the town $1.5 million. And that year is the last year that we were fully involved with the Regional Waste Authority and the Regional Waste Authority doing our residential pickup. As council just passed budget today, you can see the waste budget for 2023 is $1 million. So the waste has actually dropped $500,000 over the last few years. So that information is available to them, but I'll leave it up to council to direct administration with their request.
Does anyone have any questions about this item? Councillor Boniface.
I think if the information is available there and it's in public, that we do not ask our administration to take time out of their busy schedule to dig up the same information that they can dig up themselves.
So I'm gonna say again that we can't have discussion until there's a motion on the table. You can only ask questions.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Would anybody like to make a motion if there's no further questions? Councillor Auld.
I'll make a motion that we accept the RTA letter for information purposes at this time.
Thank you very much. Councillor Boniface, did you want to? Okay. Councillor Auld, did you want to make a discussion?
Yeah, it's not that it's what they're looking for is wrong, but maybe maybe the background where they're coming from isn't quite there. They're trying to get a comparison between what it used to be when we were part of the regional authority that contract or that agreement was dissolved when Caroline pulled out. And then it was the Clearwater County that decided to change their pickup program. So regardless of if we just decided to keep going that route, we couldn't have gone that route. So this was where we are today was our option for our residents. So if they're trying to compare it and say they want to go back to the other way, it's not a feasible question.
Does anybody else have any comments on the motion on the table? Okay, I would like to move forward as well. We have a lot of items ahead of us that I'd like, input on. This can't change what's happened in the past. And we're doing our level best to, as we can, do the budget, and which we just completed. So I like just moving forward. So I'm going to call that to vote if there's no further discussion. All in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So I think we have enough time to discuss 8.2 before taking a break. Positive ticket program barbecue invitation for January, is it January 12th? So I think would that not be like just a PR event? Yeah, and so obviously I'm unable to attend that event on behalf of the town. Would someone else, Councillor Auld be free? Is that what we're discussing, or?
No, Your Worship, it's just to bring it to the attention of council and for confirmation of which council members can attend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Auld?
I will not be able to attend that. I've got prior commitments on that day.
Councillor Hutchinson?
I can attend and would more than happily like somebody else to attend as well.
Thank you. Is anybody else able to attend on that day?
Unfortunately, I'm not able to attend that day.
Councillor Caprero?
If I'm available, I just don't know offhand if I have
Yeah.
any prior commitments, but if I'm available, I would attend.
Okay, Councillor Boniface or Councillor Shipple, I'll leave it up to you to get a hold of, we have one person attending at this point, and get a hold of, they have to know by the 5th? Yeah, so just let, so. Do we? Yeah, do we have to do a motion or, yeah, okay. Would somebody like to make the motion? Councillor Hutchinson? So, all in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So I will now recess for 10 minutes and see us back at 20. the meeting. So we're now at agenda item 8.3, the New Year's Day levy invitation from the Lieutenant Governor. So that happens New Year's Day in Edmonton, I believe. And is this just a PR item, Mr. Kraus?
Your worship, no, it wouldn't be a PR item. Council would be paid travel and per diem to attend.
Oh, okay. So I'd like to make the motion that we don't need to spend taxpayers' money on going to this event on New Year's Day, and so that we just accept it for information. Do you want to have any discussion about that motion? Oh, seeing none, I will call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So correspondence for information. Is there any items from 9.1 to 9.9 that anybody would like to bring into correspondence for action or draw attention to? Councillor Auld.
I was just looking for clarification on 9.9, the expired resolution. Do we need to redo this resolution at another time, or it's just off the books and just wasn't clear?
Yeah, so your worship, no, so the EPR has progressed since that resolution, and it's now, there's now a regulation in place from the provincial government for EPR, so they're just letting it expire. Yeah.
Okay, so if there's no further comments or questions on any of those items, I guess I'm looking for a motion. Councillor Auld.
I'll just make a motion to accept 9.1 to 9.9 for information.
Thank you very much. I don't think we need to wait for that on the screen. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So moving forward in the agenda to 10.1, administrative reports with the CAO, Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, your worship. Just to go over some of the highlights, I guess. So administration presented the town's rec and airport budget to the ICC meeting in the last month, and I think both councils have now passed their budget. I think the county council did today also. And administration did a draft JUPA agreement, which is for councils, that's the joint use and planning agreement with the school divisions. So now that we have the draft done, we'll bring it to council for review prior to us sending over to the school divisions. And a lot of the time has actually been working with council on budget in the last couple of months. Same with legislative services. You can see Ms. Breeze is working on a few bylaws and policies. We're doing a full review and bringing them forward for council's consideration. And on communication, I'm not seeing it. Communication report. Major files, waste reduction and diversion. So and you'll see the blue bin is out now for the public to pick a blue bin size as per council's request.
Did that come in the water bill then?
It just went out this week, so I'm looking over at Miss Button for where we sent that out.
Thank you, Mayor. My colleague just pointed out a typo in my report, so I was distracted by that. Yes, the blue bin size choice, households who choose to opt in for a smaller bin, that was distributed with our utilities newsletter just last week. We've had quite a bit of uptake on it in terms of people excited that it's coming. There hasn't been a huge number choosing, but we've definitely got a couple dozen.
Okay.
And there'll be a push between social media and town newsletter and the mailings from our website from people who subscribe to town news in the coming weeks.
So just to clarify, for people to reply to that, is it a paper that we mail back in, or it's an online
actually,
link?
You know what? While I have it in front of me, I can show you directly on our website. It's very simple. So, I was timing the communication of it so that we could say, hey, capital budget 2023 includes this purchase, here it is. So that's why it's not pinned front and center just yet.
That's fine.
But there is a direct link in our newsletter and in the social media posts that are scheduled in the coming days and weeks. And that is, blue bins are coming. Council's heard the feedback, and we've had lots of requests, so blue bins will be delivered in 2023. You won't need to provide clearer blue bags anymore. We don't have an estimated delivery, so late spring. Mixed recycling, paper, tin, cardboard, and numbered plastics are generally bulkier, but way less than black bin and organic waste. For this reason, the town of Rocky will be providing 360-liter curbside carts as the default size. If your household would prefer a 240-liter bin, you must complete the following form. And it's very simple, your name, address, phone number, and a confirmation that yes, you want the smaller one. All of my colleagues who answer the phone or may have a front direct interaction with a member of the public, they can also do that, fill it out over the phone. So that is quite simple.
Thank you very much for that information. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And Your Worship, I guess I'll continue, and just with the airport, it's normal operations, a lot of snow removal lately, but everything's going well at the airport. And so, council, has any questions?
I do have a question about the JUPA. Did it get resolved about the lights?
The JUPA does not reflect the lights, but we are still working on the agreement. It's in the school division's hands right now. So we've all come to agreement on terms. We're just waiting for the school division to sign off, basically.
Okay. Because that was one of the items that needed to be discussed, right?
Yep.
Okay, so is there any other questions for Mr. Kraus? Seeing none, I'll just make a motion to accept for information the CO report. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So 10.2 department reports, engineering and operations.
Mayor, council. Just a few highlights for engineering and operations. I've been fairly busy with budget, like everybody else. Actually was out in the grader for a few days. We've been shorthanded, so we've done a lot of snow, ice removal over the last month, I guess. Water treatment plant, the module filters have been replaced, the ones that we'd budgeted for and ordered. Everything went very well with that. We'll be looking at doing the last of the order of that for 2024. Frazzle ice is a huge issue down there again with this cold weather. It hit really hard last night, so right now we've got 3 steam units down at the plant going heavy trying to get rid of it. It's not looking good right now. Capital projects, Trappers Creek ditch. The contractor's been in doing a little bit of riprap work and some geofabric. They'll continue after the new year. They're taking a break for that program. The same with the infiltration program along the CN Railway right away. We'll be going in there in the new year when it's frozen to replace the manhole tops, get rid of some rings, make it so the water stays out. And the wastewater treatment plant facility, there were 11 submissions. We are down to 5, and we'll be meeting shortly to shortlist that. So, any questions?
Thank you so much for your report. Hopefully it warms up and the
Yes.
frazzle ice goes away.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So just a couple of updates from what is written in my report. From capital projects perspective, we received our final report on the pool HVAC system design. We have the RFP ready to go, and since you approved the budget today, it'll be submitted on APC tomorrow. So we'll start the process of getting that work lined up for the new year. Met with the Arts and Craft Guild. We've renewed their lease of their space for another 5 years. That was due to expire at the end of December, so they're good for 5 more years. Working with a potential sponsor for the tennis and pickleball courts. As far as facility operations, we've got our Christmas hours, special events. All things are posted on our social media and website. Mr. Kraus alluded to our work with the JUPA agreements with the school divisions. Other thing, just been involved with budget. I have had a follow-up meeting with AHS on their social worker needs. That was something that we brought up, so we've had initial discussion with them, and there'll be some more follow-up in January. And met today actually with the Bike Park Society, just confirming how they're dealing with tax receipts and stuff for some of the many donations that they've been receiving. So they're well on their way to raising some significant dollars for that project. And from the arena side of things, the outdoor rink and the oval were opened just prior to last weekend, and then we're in a deep freeze now, so I'm not sure how many people are anxious to get on those, but they are ready to go. And yeah, just normal operations for the arena. Well, I guess under the pool operations, the very last page of my report, they just list some of the special events that the pool has happening for Christmas swims and water gun swims and different types of things over the Christmas break. So unless council has any other questions for me.
I see Councillor Alt does, and then I do as well.
Just a quick question, Wes. I was speaking with the pump track, and they were trying to write the CFIP grant for funding. They seem to be struggling with it. Have they contacted you to get some assistance?
I've got Lisa working hand in hand with them on the wording of that. And after our meeting today, they'll probably be looking at the May submission for that. You know, they'll have a better handle on where they're at with their total donations received. I think it's a little too early for them to get their January submission done, but they'll be working on the submission for May. So yeah, we will give them as much help as they need to get that worded correctly.
When you were doing the JUPA, did you have a chance to talk to the school about the field sign for Curtis Field? Because a sponsor wanted it fixed. It's not working, the football field sign.
The
Curtis Field sign in the football field.
The score clock?
Yeah, they couldn't use that for the whatever game that they played. They said that the school board wouldn't accept donations to fix that, and I brought it up just after that. We won the whatever seasonal, or I don't know which division. Did you have any discussions
we've
with them?
determined that the score clock is school property, so it'd be incumbent to them to replace or repair.
Yes, just because we have this JUPA agreement, I'm just curious if you've had a chance to talk to them about if we could funnel donations from the community towards the school to get the sign fixed.
We haven't had that specific conversation at this point, no.
Could you add that to your list when you talk to them? Because that was something that was brought up to me, and then I understand that the school owns that clock.
Yeah.
But if a community donor would like to fix it so that we could use it for the football teams that rent the field, it would be just like a really nice partnership.
I could certainly pass that on to their division facility maintenance manager, yes.
Yeah, because, or even if there is some way that money could be funneled, right? I'm all about a community donator
Yep.
giving money to fix something that the school owns, that would be fantastic. So we just need to maybe,
Yeah, that would be easy
Figure
enough
out
to
the
have
path.
that conversation and direct them in the right direction.
okay, thank you. Maybe they don't even know what, I don't know what the deal is there, but it's not working. Thank you so much. Counselor Phillips, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just had, again, a question about the JUPA. Did the conversation of the teams being able to use the change rooms in the high school, was that the topic that was addressed?
You know, just for clarification, we haven't talked to the school divisions about the JUPA in this forum. So we've drafted the agreement, and we'll bring this agreement to council for review before we send it to the school division. The talk on the score clock, that was in regards to the meeting with the field lighting, is where that came up. It didn't come up in the JUPA meeting. In regards to the dressing rooms at the football, no, we haven't had that discussion yet, but.
Yes, thank you so much. Did anyone else have any questions? Well, thank you very much for your report.
Good afternoon, Mayor Bache and Council. Just before you, just in regards to a couple of items. SEEP slowed down a bit because of winter, but my administration is still doing paperwork for the program. As far as permits for this year, development permits are up, building permits are up. The value of building permits is up compared to 2021. Up by $4.5 million. We roughly did $9 million, and $12 million was for the hospital for 2022. We did have MPC this morning for pickleball subdivision. It got passed, so we're in the process of subdividing the pickleball court from Mr. Kennedy's 8 lots. In regards to ECDEV, our EDO continues to meet with Travel Alberta for David Thompson Tourism and the Cowboy Trail Tourism Destination Zones. Last week for Passport to Christmas, it's been a huge success again this year. Joint effort between the town, county, and the Chamber of Commerce, and the local businesses have all bought into the program as well. Health and Safety, OH&S coordinator, continues to do some tidying up for the year end and doing some formal inspections for the fourth quarter. Protective Services, we had 62 files for the month of November, 36 were municipal calls, 14 were provincial, 8 were assisting other agencies, and 2 were public relations and training, and 2 arrests. As you can see in my report, my officers were busy with a couple of altercations within the community, as well as there was 49 violation tickets issued in November for a total of $9,500 in revenue, or sorry, in fines. In November 24th, 25th, there's an annual charity check stop with all the different agencies, Clearwater Regional Fire, county peace officers, town peace officers, Fish and Wildlife, and they collected $12,000 between here and Caroline. And then Officer Kayla Whistle usually holds her annual Stuff the Cruiser event, which was held on December 6th. We had record number for cash donation and food donation for this year. Any questions?
Seeing none, thank you so much for your report.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Actually, the bulk of my last month, I was just gonna do big bold letters budget, because really that's been our major focus for the last month, but it has successfully concluded. We've already started working preliminary work on the year end. We actually had the auditors working on interim work this last week, so that's even better because they come in and start doing their stuff. It speeds up the process. The only other item I want to mention, and it's more just a heads up, there's a really good possibility we may need to have some tax sales in 2023. There's a very detailed process laid out in the MGA, and we work very closely with anybody that gets behind on property taxes. But right now, we have 7 properties that could potentially go for sale. We have to submit to by March 31st to the government, and it does say must, so, but we'll keep working, and quite often when you get to that point, they will get caught up on their taxes. But just, once we submit that, then we will have a tax sale anywhere. They give you a time frame of between April 1st, 2023 and March 2024. And they do have right up until the day, I'm going to say before, but to pay. So we are looking at potentially having some sales next year. And that's my report. Question?
I don't see any questions. Thank you very much for your report. So I'll make a motion to accept for information the department reports for 10.2.
I will still make that motion, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So moving on to the agenda action list for 11.1. Mr. Kraus?
Thank you, Your Worship. Does council want me to go through the action list or questions, but I can provide an update on anything open if council wishes.
I think everybody's had a chance to read it, and so I think it would be fine. Do I see any questions on the floor? No, I think we're fine. Do we have any? So I'll need a motion to accept for information the action list. Councillor Phillips.
I will make a motion to accept the action list as presented.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So 12, do we have any administrative inquiries? Councillor Boniface.
I do. At the policing committee meeting that we had a week ago, one of the things that came up is one of our town officers presented what we do with sidewalks that aren't being shoveled. And apparently it's an enormous amount of work for them to collect a $75 fine. And it really makes no sense that if we're going to charge somebody $75 as a fine, that we're spending $750 on an officer's time because they are actually having to go back to that site, by the sounds of it, up to 5 different times. Not to mention all the paperwork and everything else that goes with it to collect $75. As far as I'm concerned, I think we need to ask administration to bring this to us and take a look at either increasing the fines or just doing away with it. Like if it's a complaint, the officer can stop by, hang a little thing saying, shovel your sidewalk and move on from it, because they're spending, the time is spent better elsewhere than wasting this time doing this. So I'd say if we're gonna do it, let's give it some teeth, and instead of $75, it's $750. Or we're gonna have a town crew go out and shovel your sidewalk and you're gonna get a really good bill, whichever way we decide to go. But I wanted to bring it up here in administrative inquiries because I'm not sure which direction we should take this.
Does anybody, I don't know does anybody want to make a notice of motion, or do you want to just have administration look into it?
I think just administration to look into it and bring it back to us and say whether it's a feasible idea or not. If everybody else says that's okay with them, that's great with me. Again, I just didn't want to see us wasting money and resource time on an officer for doing something that isn't really getting done.
Mr. Kraus, do you need a motion for that?
So, Your Worship, so if it's just an inquiry from administration for information on how we handle clearing of sidewalks, we can just bring back a report through an administrative inquiry. If council wants to review the community standards bylaws for fees, that would be a notice of motion because of, so.
I think you're happy with just the report coming back? Okay. Is there any other administrative inquiries today? Seeing none, I'll move on to notice of motion. Are there any notices of motion today? Counselor Ald.
I'm bringing a notice of motion today. I'm gonna be asking administration to do some investigating into the Riverside industrial or residential subdivision down at the north end of town. I'd like to see if we can start some discussions on development or how we move forward with that property down there as far as developing some residential opportunities, whether we get into the business and develop that property or how we move ahead with that. Yes.
Does that look correct on the screen? Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any other notices of motion today? Seeing none, I can move forward. So I'll take a brief 5-minute recess so that we can prepare to go into closed session. So, thank you very much. We are back, and because we have a few items to discuss in closed session, I'll need a motion to enter closed session, please.
I
Counselor,
will make the motion to go into closed session. Oh, sorry, Counselor Capero. I'm sorry.
you did it. It's all good. Okay, just wait. I will let you know. That will help. So, Counselor Capero, and if you do your light, yeah.
He beat me to putting my light on. But I'll make a motion to move into closed session.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Ready.
We are live again.
So welcome back. We've just left closed session, and I believe we have one motion. Counselor Phillips, did you want to make that motion?
For sure, I will make that motion. I'd like to make a motion that council appoint Councillor Dale Shippold and Janelle Schooler to the Healthcare Professional Engagement Team Chamber Committee effective December 20th, 2022, with their term expiring at the 2023 organizational meeting.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion, if there's no, yes. And that's carried. And so with that being done, I'm going to adjourn today's meeting. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.